Hi guys, how are you? This is Mrs. Stollard. Mrs. Lindsay and I are excited this week for you guys to kind of be finishing up the phase of astronomy where you learn about the different moon phases. So last week in your book, you guys should have read about the various phases of the moon. Before looking at this, if you haven't done so already, please make sure that you guys watch that short Bill Nye where he compares moon phases to a game of baseball or softball. Most of you guys are probably familiar with the game, and I'll show you a little bit more detail about that in a second. In the slideshow that I will go through with you, all of the documents I'm going to be sharing with you today are also something that we've uploaded for you for the next couple of days for you to work on. Hopefully, if you can, doing this lab activity. So you're at a point now where we would probably be doing this lab called Amuntha Phases with you. The moon cycle takes just under a month, about 28 days to go around the Earth. And during that time, you see different phases. So the idea of this lab is to show you, well, why would that happen? And the idea is because it just is how the moon is changing its position like a little runner in baseball going around the Earth. So this document will be available for you. Notice it says what causes the phases of the moon is your problem. Materials you would need would be a floor lamp. It says a 150 watt bulb. I'll be honest, I don't think we ever have had that high of a wattage of bulb before. We just basically take the shade off of a lamp and try to have a room that's kind of darkened. So if you have shades or something, just go ahead and pull them. Extension cord would be mainly just so that you're not like tripping over the lamp. So just make sure it's safe, that you're not going to be tripping over anything. And then it says a plastic foam ball. So for that, you really could have just about anything that would be like a white sphere. I'm guessing most of you guys probably have something. If you don't, I don't know, maybe you can take some aluminum foil and then put some white paper over it, or, try to be creative here. And the pencil is just to write down the answers on the back. So you guys will see there's directions. I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but basically as you turn, you definitely want to make sure that you're always turning to the left. So here it asks for you to put a pencil in there, like a handle into the ball. If you have a ball that is not something you want to stick a pencil into, just try to hold it maybe with your left hand and always be turning to the left. You'll notice that it talks about having a partner. You could have somebody at your house be your partner, or you could just, do the lab on your own and then record the answers later using the slideshow or using the word bank at the bottom. You could stop after each phase and write the answers down. You can, it's pretty simple to do. You just kind of are turning around. Notice there's 8 different positions. And if you take a look on the back of the lab, this is where you would be starting. So the way that it's going to look, I'm going to just share this with you guys. It's another paper. I don't think we're going to be sharing it with you, just to show you like what it would look like. So here's your sphere or your ball, and then here's your lamp. And basically you're just going to be starting in this position. So notice that the ball or the moon is dark here because the light side would be facing the sun. So basically what we call that, for number 1, I'm going to give you guys an answer, is new moon. There is going to be a Google form quiz where you just basically type in or select off of choices for each one of these moon phases and each one of these questions down below. You're going to be sharing with us what you found in the lab. So even if you can't officially do the lab, look through the slideshow instead and just kind of write down the moon phases, and then kind of picture yourself in this position, turning around a little bit to the left, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the left. At some point, your back will face the moon, and then you keep turning around until you end up back here at the starting point. Okay. So as you look at the moon phases, you're going to be writing down the name of the phase for each one of these 8 different phases up here, and I'll talk through all of those in a second with you. Then it asks you in the model what's representing the Earth, the sun. Gosh, I wonder what that could be. and the moon. So you really have yourself, you have your sphere or your ball, and you have the lamp. So you have to figure out which one of those is which one of these items that you're pretending. Then it says whether you could see it or not, how much of the surface is always lit by the lamp. So you can think about why, but really the answer number 3 is what you'll be sharing with us on the Google form. And then it says for this, we're going to be talking about, I'm going to give you a giant hint here in a minute. It says which lit half of the moon is visible when the moon is waxing, the left or the right, and which is visible when the moon is waning, the left or the right. And I'm going to tell you that answer in just a minute. And then here is just the word bank for the moon phases that you'll be filling in up here at the top. So hopefully you guys can all do that lab. Do your best. If you need to just do with the slideshow that we'll also be sharing, that I'm going to be sharing with you right now, that's fine too. So moving on to the slideshow, this is being uploaded. It says moon phases. And if you go to the first one, this is a really cool picture that kind of goes along with the Bill Nye video that you guys watched. So down here at the bottom is where the sun is. And depending on what you're looking at, sometimes I've seen worksheets where the sun is down here at the bottom. Sometimes it's up here at the top, over here at the left, or on the right. And basically that's kind of like when you go to a baseball field or diamond when you're playing or observing or watching somebody else. Every time the home plate is going to be facing a different direction. So wherever the umpire is, sorry about that. Wherever the umpire is or the catcher, that's basically where home plate is. So new moon is always going to be the moon that is going to be closest to where the sun is, because from Earth, this is what we would see. But the other half, I wonder if that's an answer to one of the lab questions, the other half of the moon that's facing away from the Earth is going to be lit by the sun. So the reason we don't see any of it is because the lit half is facing the sun and the dark half is facing the Earth. So in that lab, I wonder what is the Earth, the thing that's in the middle between the ball and the sun. I wonder if that's a U. Interesting. Okay. So anyway, when my batter gets a hit, this new moon here, you should know that it's going to be running in this direction. We call this base right here first base. Interestingly enough, we also call this moon first quarter moon. Notice the right side is lit. And if you look at all of these 3 moon phases, which I'll chat with you about in a second, you'll notice the right side's lit, right side's lit, right side's lit. This might be the answer to another one of your lab questions. Mrs. Lindsay and I always tell kids that it's sort of like, looks like a letter D. Right side lit, right side lit. This one is the most looking like a D, and this one as well. So in between home plate and first base, we have something called a waxing, which means getting bigger, and then crescent. And then here we have when the runner gets to the first base or the first quarter away around the Earth, we call that first quarter, and it looks like a letter D. Then our runner might be on the move again towards second base, but on the way, we have another one of these in-between intermediary phases. We call this, where it's almost full, a gibbous moon. Notice there's a gibbous moon on either side of our second base position moon, on the opposite side of the Earth from the sun, where the full lit side of the sun or of the moon is being lit by the sun is facing the people on Earth. Whoops, I did it again. Sorry, guys. So anyway, in second base position, we call this a full moon. Now, at this position, we are going to make it sort of optional, but kind of fun still for you guys to learn about eclipses. The Earth is kind of like anything else. When it's standing in the way of light, it can make a shadow. So always the Earth is making a shadow. You notice in the video from Bill Nye that he kind of angled the moon up, because usually the moon, when it goes into this plane, the second base position isn't perfectly in line with the Earth's shadow. It goes just above it. So that's why we don't have an eclipse all the time. But if the full moon wanders into the Earth's shadow, we get something called a lunar eclipse. So anyway, this in-between moon, we call this waxing, because waxing means it's slowly getting bigger, going towards our full moon phase. and it's a gibbous moon, which means humpback or three-fourths. So it's like a three-fourths moon. Okay. So once we get past second base, heading on our way to third base, we have another gibbous moon, but now notice it's waning, waning, waning. Notice it looks more like a letter C. So if you guys know that our nation's capital is Washington, D, C, the D's come first. They're waxing, right side's lit, and then the C's come towards the end of the lunar cycle. The left side is lit. So just a way that Mrs. Lindsay and I always, when we look out at the moons, we just ask ourselves, is it the right side lit or is it the left side lit? And then that tells us if we have a waxing or a waning moon. Of course, it's obvious if it's a full moon, it's not waxing or waning. Like that's kind of the big show. Okay. So we have a waning gibbous moon. Here at third base, we call this either last quarter or third quarter, and we kind of prefer third quarter because it goes along with that baseball analogy, helps me picture that the moon is kind of 3/4 of the way around the Earth in the lunar cycle. And then on the way back to the new moon phase, you can see that we have another one of these crescent moons. The crescents are on either side of the new moon, and it looks like a letter C, so it tells me it's a waning crescent. The new moon is also a time when possibly we could see an eclipse. The next eclipse that we're going to have, that would be a solar eclipse where the moon is going to block our view of the sun, is going to be on April 8th of 2024. So don't tell anyone, I might take off that day. It's a Monday. So super excited about that event. So I might take off because I'm actually going to go somewhere towards like central Illinois or Indiana where it gets completely dark. If you remember a couple of years ago, we had a partial solar eclipse here in the Wheaton-Warrenville area, and it got a little bit dark, but not completely. It was a little bit disappointing, so I want to see the full thing. So in that case, the new moon covers up the entire amount of the sun just because the sun is so much further away, and it appears to cover it up for a few minutes. And then it gets dark. So we have a couple of videos at the end of this slideshow, if you were to open this up, that you can see videos about both the lunar and the solar eclipse. So at this point, if you were doing the lab, this is you're holding your sphere. Remember I said you're going to be turning a little bit to the left, a little bit to the left. So this is, we're going to take a look at all the phases separately now. So when I'm facing the sun, I'm going to see the new moon because, like I said, the lit half of the sun is facing away from the Earth. So we call that a new moon. It's kind of in the position where the pitcher's mound would be facing towards the umpire or home plate. So the Earth is at the pitcher's mound. Now, as you slowly turn to the left, if you're doing this lab with me right now, you should start to see just this little dash looking like a letter D of sunlit side of the moon. It's a crescent because it's just like a little sliver. Another word for crescent would be like a sliver of a moon. And it's waxing because it looks like a letter. Which letter? Hopefully you know it's letter D. Okay. So now when my right shoulder is facing my sun or my lamp, I would have my runner or my moon would be at first base position. This is first quarter moon. Right side is lit. So when you see the whole right side, that means it's in that first base position. We call it first quarter. So we keep turning a little dash to the left. At some point, we can see a waxing gibbous moon where it's almost full, but you can still see that there's a dash of a shadow here on the left. Mostly the right side is lit up again, looking like a letter D. So when my back is to the moon, I see a full moon. If you pull the moon down where your shadow goes over it, then you will notice that you can see a lunar eclipse. And I'll share with you lunar eclipse dates coming up this year. But if you pull the moon up above the shadow, then you'll notice that you can see the entire lit side, and your moon should be at second base position. So your back is facing the lamp or the sun, and then your moon ball is on second base. As we head towards third, again, we have a gibbous moon where it's almost lit, but not quite. But now you notice I see the left side lit. The right side has a little dash of a shadow because it looks more like a letter C. We call it waning. means getting smaller, going towards our new moon again. And then gibbous means 3/4 or humpback. So this like adjectives here. Okay. Now my runner gets to third base. Conveniently, we can call that third quarter moon. We can also call it last quarter moon. It looks like a letter C. The left side is lit. So that's how I can tell the difference between the first and the third quarter. And then I go a little more to the left and I can see now it's turning back into a crescent, only this time it's waning again, means getting smaller, going back towards my new moon, where the lit side is going to be facing away from the earth. Looks like a letter C, like Washington, D.C. The C's come second. So then you would go back to a new moon phase. And before I talk about the videos that you can look at, you can close one eye and try to cover up the sun and make it look like a solar eclipse. And surprisingly enough, we have a couple of solar eclipse videos for you. If you download the slideshow, you just click on these and you can go to 3 different videos. And like I said, April 8th, 2024 is our next total eclipse. I believe Warrenville is going to be in the partial eclipse area. So if you travel a little further to the south, the area of what we call totality is not going to be very far away. So that's pretty exciting. So 4 years away. Lunar eclipse, we have 2 videos for you to take a look at. And notice that our next partial eclipse is going to be July 4th into 5th. So obviously it's going to start a little bit before midnight and extend the eclipse until a little bit after midnight on the 5th. And also we're going to have another partial eclipse on November 30th of 2020. So the videos will explain what does that mean, a partial eclipse. So hopefully this all makes sense. You can do the lab and then please go ahead and answer the Google form that goes along with it. Take your time. You have a couple of days to get this done before we move on to the next lesson. So have a great day and thanks for watching.